Jake Morrison looked out the window of the space station and saw Earth spinning slowly below him. He had been in space for 3 months now, but he still got excited when he saw his home planet. Today was different, though. Today he would meet his first alien. The space station was called New Horizon. It was huge, bigger than any building Jake had ever seen on Earth. Humans and aliens worked together here, sharing knowledge and trying to understand each other. Jake was a lieutenant in the Earth Defense Corps, but his job here was not about fighting. He was supposed to help humans and aliens talk to each other. "Lieutenant Morrison, please report to Meeting Room 7, came a voice over the speakers. Jake checked his uniform one more time and walked down the long hallway. The walls were white and clean, with windows showing the stars outside. He passed other humans wearing blue uniforms like his. Some were scientists, some were engineers, and some were soldiers like him. When he reached Meeting Room 7, he took a deep breath and opened the door. Inside, he saw Captain Lisa Torres sitting at a table with another person. But this other person was not human. She had pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly under the lights. Her hair was silver and fell to her shoulders in perfect waves. Her eyes were purple, a color Jake had never seen in human eyes. She was tall and thin, wearing a white outfit that looked very fancy. When she saw Jake, she stood up quickly and pulled out a small device that looked like a tablet. "Lieutenant Morrison," said Captain Torres, "meet Lyra. She is from the planet Zephyr. She will be working with you on the cultural exchange program." Jake walked forward and held out his hand to shake hers. This was normal for humans when they met someone new. But Lyra stared at his hand like it was dangerous. She looked at her tablet, then back at his hand, then at the captain. "Is this the sacred greeting ritual?" Lyra asked. Her voice was soft and musical, but she spoke English with a strange accent. "Should I prepare ceremonial responses?" Jake looked confused. "It's just a handshake," he said. "We do it when we meet new people." Lyra's eyes went wide. She quickly typed something on her tablet. "Fascinating. Humans perform contact ceremonies with strangers. This suggests high trust levels in your species." She carefully reached out and shook Jake's hand very gently, like she was touching something precious. Captain Torres smiled. "Lyra is here to study human behavior. She wants to understand how we act and why we do the things we do. Jake, your job is to show her normal human life and help her understand our customs." "Normal human life," Lyra repeated, typing more notes. "Please define normal in this context," Jake laughed. "Just regular stuff. How we eat, how we talk to friends, what we do for fun. Nothing special." "Nothing is not special," Lyra said seriously. "All behavior has meaning. All actions have purpose. I must understand the purpose behind human social patterns." Captain Torres stood up. "I'll leave you two to get started. Jake, show Lyra around the station. Help her understand how humans live and work here." After the captain left, Jake and Lyra stood looking at each other. Jake had never talked to an alien before. He did not know what to say or how to act. Lyra was writing notes on her tablet again. "So," Jake said, "would you like to see the cafeteria? We could grab some coffee and talk." Lyra stopped writing and stared at him. "Grab coffee? This is a beverage acquisition ritual?" Jake scratched his head. "No, it's just getting coffee. Like going to get something to drink." "I see," Lyra typed quickly. "Humans use physical action words for non-physical activities. Grab suggests forceful taking, but you mean peaceful obtaining. Very interesting." They walked to the cafeteria together. Jake noticed that other people stared at them as they passed. Some humans had never seen a Zephyrian before. Lyra did not seem to notice the stares. She was too busy looking at everything and taking notes. In the cafeteria, Jake got a cup of coffee from the machine. Lyra watched every move he made. "The liquid is dark," she observed. "Is this a nutritional requirement or a social custom?" "Both, I guess," Jake said. "Coffee has caffeine. It helps us stay awake, but we also drink it because we like how it tastes." "Taste preference," Lyra wrote. "Not purely functional consumption." They sat down at a table. Jake drank his coffee while Lyra studied him. It felt strange to have someone watch him so carefully, like he was an animal in a zoo. "Do all humans consume this beverage?" Lyra asked. "Most do. Some people drink tea instead. Some don't drink either." "Individual variation within species behavioral patterns," Lyra muttered, typing fast. A woman in a lab coat walked by their table. "Hey, Jake," she said. "How's it going?" "Pretty good, thanks," Jake replied. The woman continued walking. Lyra looked excited. "Stop. she called to the woman. You performed a wellness assessment on Jake Morrison. What were the results? The woman looked confused. What? You asked about his condition. How's it going? This is a health inquiry, yes? Jake started laughing. No, that's just what we say. It's like saying hello. She wasn't really asking about my health. But the words clearly request status information, Lyra protested. It's just politeness, Jake explained. We say it to be friendly. Lyra looked frustrated. Your species says words that do not mean what they say. Sometimes, yeah. This is very confusing, Lyra said. How do I know when humans mean their words and when they do not? Jake thought about this. I guess you learn from context. Like if someone you barely know asks how you're doing. They're just being polite. If your best friend asks, they probably really want to know. Context determines meaning, Lyra wrote. Relationship status affects communication interpretation. They spent the next hour walking around the station. Jake showed Lyra the gym, the library, and the observation deck. Every normal thing humans did amazed her. When Jake waved at a friend across the room, Lyra wanted to know if it was a distance communication ritual. When someone sneezed and another person said, "Bless you," Lyra thought it was a religious ceremony. By the end of the day, Lyra had filled dozens of pages with notes. Jake felt tired from explaining every simple thing they did. Tomorrow I will observe more human social behaviors, Lyra said as they walked back to her quarters. This research is most valuable. Sure, Jake said. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Lyra repeated. Another non-literal phrase. You will observe me with your eyes tomorrow. Jake smiled. Working with Lyra was going to be interesting. She looked at everything humans did like it was the most important discovery in the universe. Maybe it was, from her point of view. As he walked to his own room, Jake wondered what other surprises tomorrow would bring. He had a feeling that teaching Lyra about human customs was going to teach him a few things too. The next morning, Jake found Lyra in the translation lab. She was working with Dr. Chris Patel, a human scientist who studied alien biology. They were both looking at screens full of words and symbols. Good morning, Jake said as he walked in. Lyra looked up from her work. Her skin seemed brighter blue today, almost glowing. Good morning, Jake Morrison. I have been studying your language patterns since 0500 hours. You've been up since 5 in the morning? Jake asked. Don't you need sleep? Zephyrians require only 4 hours of rest per day, Lyra explained. I spent the additional time analyzing yesterday's conversations. Dr. Patel smiled at Jake. She's been asking me about human emotions all morning. It's fascinating to see how differently our species experience feelings. Jake sat down next to them. What do you mean? Well, Dr. Patel said, Zephyrians have very controlled emotional responses. They experience feelings more like chemical reactions that they can predict and manage. Human emotions are much more chaotic. Lyra nodded. Yes, when humans say they feel happy or sad, these states seem to change rapidly and without logical cause. Yesterday, I observed you experience 17 different emotional states in 1 hour. 17? Jake laughed. I didn't feel like I was changing moods that much. You smiled when you saw coffee. You frowned when the elevator was slow. You looked surprised when I asked about the handshake ritual. Each expression indicated a different internal state. Dr. Patel pointed to Lyra. Zephyrians also express emotions, but through skin color changes instead of facial expressions. Watch this. He told Lyra a funny story about a scientist who accidentally mixed up 2 chemicals and turned his hair green for a week. As Dr. Patel spoke, Lyra's skin shifted from light blue to a slightly deeper shade. Jake could see the color change happening slowly across her face and hands. That is amusement, Lyra explained. When we find something funny, our skin darkens slightly. What about other emotions? Jake asked. What color do you turn when you're sad or angry? Lyra's skin immediately became much paler, almost white. Distress creates loss of pigmentation. Anger produces red tinting, she paused. There is one other emotional state, but it is private. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Dr. Patel's computer beeped with an urgent message. I have to go deal with this, he said. Lyra, Jake, keep working on the translation program. We need to make sure both species can communicate clearly. After Dr. Patel left, Jake and Lyra worked together on updating the language database. They found many words that did not translate well between English and Zephyrian. Your word love is very confusing, Lyra said. You use it for family members, for romantic partners, for food, for activities. In Zephyrian, we have 37 different words for different types of affection. That does sound more precise, Jake agreed. What about the word friend? Do you have different words for different kinds of friends? Of course. There is Cathan for work companions, Velnar for childhood companions, Zorith for those you trust with secrets. Lyra paused and looked at Jake carefully. I'm not sure what kind of friend you are to me. Jake felt a strange warmth in his chest. Well, we just met yesterday. I guess we're still figuring that out. Lyra's skin shifted to a deeper blue again. She quickly looked back at her computer screen. Yes, still determining the appropriate classification. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Jake noticed that Lyra kept glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. Every time their eyes met, her skin got a little bluer and she would quickly look away. Around lunchtime, Jake's friend Amy Collins came into the lab. She was another lieutenant who worked in communications. Hey Jake, Amy said. Are you still planning that date for this weekend? Jake had completely forgotten. Last week, before meeting Lyra, he had been planning to ask someone from the engineering department out to dinner. Oh, right. Yeah, I think I'm going to ask Rebecca if she wants to go to that new restaurant on Deck 5. Date night, huh? Amy grinned. Very romantic. Don't forget flowers. After Amy left, Jake noticed that Lyra was staring at him with very wide eyes. Her skin had turned almost white with shock. Jake Morrison, she said slowly. Did I understand correctly? You are planning a ceremony called date night? A ceremony? Jake was confused. No, it's just dinner. You know, two people eating together and talking. Lyra pulled out her tablet and started typing frantically. But your friend mentioned flowers, and she called it romantic. These suggest ritual significance. Well, yes, it's romantic because I like Rebecca and I want to spend time with her. The flowers are just a nice gesture. Lyra looked even more shocked. You are pursuing a mating partnership? Jake's face turned red. It's not that serious. It's just a first date. We're getting to know each other. A first date, Lyra repeated. The beginning of courtship rituals. I guess you could call it that, Jake said. But it's very casual. We might decide we don't like each other that way. Lyra stood up suddenly. I must research this immediately. Human courtship practices are clearly more complex than our initial observation suggested. She rushed out of the lab, leaving Jake sitting alone. He wondered what had made her so excited about his dating plans. Maybe Zephyrians had very different ways of finding romantic partners. Later that afternoon, Jake was in the cafeteria when he saw Lyra talking to Dr. Patel again. She was showing him something on her tablet and asking lots of questions. When Jake approached their table, both of them stopped talking and looked at him strangely. Is everything okay? Jake asked. Yes, Lyra said quickly. We were just discussing human nutritional requirements. Dr. Patel nodded, but he was smiling like he knew a secret. How are your translation studies going, Jake? Pretty well. Lyra is teaching me a lot about Zephyrian language. Did you know they have different words for different types of rain? Fascinating, Dr. Patel said. Lyra, didn't you have something you wanted to ask Jake about human customs? Lyra's skin turned bright blue again. No questions. All human customs are perfectly clear. Jake knew she was lying. She had been asking questions about everything since she arrived. Now suddenly she understood all human customs. That didn't make sense. Are you sure? Jake asked. You can ask me anything. That's what I'm here for. Perhaps, Lyra said carefully, you could explain the proper protocols for ceremonial observations. Ceremonial observations. When humans perform important rituals, are friends permitted to witness them? Jake thought about this. Depends on the ritual, I guess. Like if someone gets married, they usually invite their friends to watch. But some things are private. Lyra typed notes quickly. And how does one determine if they are permitted to observe? Usually the person performing the ritual invites you, or you ask if you can come. I see. Lyra's skin was cycling through different shades of blue now, and if one wished to support a friend during an important ceremony, what would be the appropriate behavior? Just be there for them, I guess. Offer help if they need it. Lyra nodded seriously. Support and assistance during important life events. This is standard friendship protocol. Jake was getting more confused by the minute. Lyra, what kind of ceremony are you talking about? Nothing specific, she said quickly. General research only. Dr. Patel was trying not to laugh. Well, I should get back to work. Good luck with your Research Lyra. After he left, Jake and Lyra sat in awkward silence. She kept typing notes and looking at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Lyra, Jake said finally, I feel like there's something you're not telling me. Her skin turned pale. I am simply trying to understand human social structures. Okay, but you're acting strange. Yesterday you asked about everything. Today you're pretending you understand things that I know you don't. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, in Zephyrian culture, we believe that knowledge gained through direct observation is more valuable than knowledge given freely. I'm trying to observe and understand rather than simply ask questions. That made sense to Jake. But you can still ask me things. I don't mind explaining. Thank you, Lyra said. Your friendship is important to me. As she said this, her skin turned the deepest blue Jake had seen yet. He was starting to understand that this particular shade meant something special, but he wasn't sure what. Your friendship is important to me too, he said. Lyra's smile was brighter than any human smile Jake had ever seen. For a moment, he forgot she was an alien at all. She was just Lyra, his friend who saw the world in a completely different way, but made him think about things he had never considered before. He had no idea that she was already planning something that would change both their lives forever. Over the next few days, Lyra acted very strangely. Jake would see her in the computer lab at all hours, researching things on the human cultural database. When he asked what she was studying, she would quickly close her screens and say it was just general research. Dr. Patel seemed to know what was going on, but every time Jake asked him, he just smiled and said it was not his place to explain. This made Jake even more curious. On Wednesday morning, Jake found Lyra in the hydroponics bay, which was where the station grew plants for food. She was talking to Pete Rodriguez, one of the engineers who took care of the gardens. So these red flowers represent romantic affection? Lyra was asking, pointing to some roses. Yeah, that's right, Pete said. Red roses are classic. You give them to someone you love. And yellow flowers? Friendship. White ones are for new beginnings or sometimes for saying sorry. Jake walked up to them. Hey, what are you guys talking about? Lyra jumped and turned around. Her skin went very pale, which Jake now knew meant she was nervous or scared. Botanical research, she said quickly. I am learning about human plant cultivation. Pete looked confused. But I thought you were asking about flowers for general botanical knowledge only, Lyra interrupted. Nothing specific. Jake was getting tired of her mysterious behavior. Lyra, what's really going on? You've been acting weird all week. I do not act weird, Lyra protested. All my actions are perfectly normal. Pete laughed. She's been asking everyone about human ceremonies. Yesterday she wanted to know about wedding traditions. The day before that she was asking about formal dinners. Lyra's skin turned bright red, which Jake had learned meant anger or embarrassment. These conversations were confidential research. Why are you studying ceremonies? Jake asked. Is there some Zephyrian holiday coming up? No, Lyra said. I am simply preparing for possible future cultural observations. Before Jake could ask more questions, Captain Torres's voice came over the speakers. Lieutenant Morrison and Research Specialist Lyra, please report to my office immediately. In the captain's office, they found Captain Torres sitting with a Zephyrian who appeared on the large screen. He had darker blue skin than Lyra and wore very fancy clothes with lots of decorations. Jake, Lyra, Captain Torres said, I'd like you to meet Ambassador Vex. He's the Zephyrian representative to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Vex nodded formally. Lieutenant Morrison, it is an honor to meet the human who has been working so closely with Lyra. Her reports about human culture have been most illuminating. Thank you, sir, Jake said. Captain Torres, Ambassador Vex continued, I have a request. Next week, the Galactic Council will be meeting to discuss the success of our cultural exchange program. We would like Jake and Lyra to present their findings to the Council. Captain Torres smiled. That's wonderful. This could really help improve relations between our species. Lyra looked excited and nervous at the same time. Her skin was cycling through different shades of blue very quickly. This is a great honor, she said. We will not disappoint you. After Ambassador Vex ended the call, Captain Torres gave them their assignment. They had 1 week to prepare a presentation about what they had learned about each other's cultures. This is your chance to show how much progress we've made, Captain Torres said. The Council needs to see that humans and Zephyrians can work together successfully. When they left the captain's office, Lyra was practically glowing with excitement. "This is perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect timing." "Perfect timing for what?" Jake asked. "For our presentation, of course." But she was smiling in a way that made Jake think she meant something else. That afternoon, Jake went to the recreation deck to play basketball with some friends. Amy Collins was there, along with Steve Harris from security and Maria Santos from the medical bay. "So," Amy said while they took a break, "did you ever ask Rebecca out?" "Not yet," Jake said. "I've been busy with this presentation thing, but I'm thinking about asking her this weekend. Maybe we could have dinner at that new place on Deck 5. "Date night," Steve said. "Nice. Are you nervous?" "A little," Jake admitted. "I haven't been on a real date in a while." "Just be yourself," Maria advised. "And maybe bring flowers." "Women like flowers," Jake laughed. "That's what everyone keeps telling me." What Jake didn't know was that Lyra was listening to their conversation from the observation area above the recreation deck. She had been watching him play basketball, which she thought might be some kind of human combat training ritual. When she heard him talking about his date plans, she pulled out her tablet and started taking notes. "This weekend," she wrote. "The ceremony will happen this weekend." Later that evening, Lyra went to the main computer and accessed the station's database of human cultural information. She'd been reading about human ceremonies for days, but now she knew she had to focus on the specific type of ceremony Jake was planning. She read about weddings, which seemed too formal. She read about birthday parties, which didn't match what Jake had described. Finally, she found information about dating rituals and romantic dinners. The more she read, the more convinced she became that Jake was planning something very important. In Zephyrian culture, formal courtship involved elaborate ceremonies that lasted for days. The families of both people would attend. There would be special foods, traditional music, and ceremonial exchanges of gifts. If Jake was beginning formal courtship with this Rebecca person, it was clearly a very significant event in his life. As his friend, Lyra felt she should do something to support him. She spent the next hour researching human wedding ceremonies, formal dinners, and romantic traditions. She took notes on everything from flower arrangements to proper table settings. She even found information about something called wedding planning, which seemed to be a whole profession dedicated to organizing these ceremonies. The next day, Lyra started making preparations. She went to the quartermaster and requested the use of the main conference room for cultural research purposes. She told him she needed it for the weekend, starting Friday evening. Then she went to the kitchen staff and asked about ordering special foods. She wanted to create a menu that combined human and Zephyrian traditions, thinking this would honor both cultures in Jake's ceremony. "What's the occasion?" asked Chef Williams, the head cook. "A very important human ritual," Lyra explained. "A ceremonial dinner for two people who are beginning a formal relationship." Chef Williams smiled. "Ah, a romantic dinner, very nice. I can definitely help with that." Lyra also visited the station's supply officer to ask about decorations. She had read that humans used flowers, candles, and soft lighting for romantic ceremonies. "This sounds like quite an event," the supply officer said. "How many people are you expecting?" "I am not certain," Lyra admitted. In Zephyrian culture, such ceremonies involve the extended families and close friends of both participants. "Perhaps 50 or 60 people." "50 or 60? The supply officer looked surprised. "That's a big romantic dinner." "It is a very important ceremony," Lyra said seriously. By Thursday, word had spread around the station that Lyra was planning some kind of big event. People started asking Jake about it, but he had no idea what they were talking about. "I heard Lyra booked the main conference room for a romantic dinner," Amy said. "Do you know anything about that?" "No," Jake said. "Maybe it's for her presentation research?" "What kind of presentation research involves romantic dinners?" Jake didn't know, but he was starting to get a strange feeling that Lyra's mysterious behavior was connected to something bigger than just studying human customs. On Thursday evening, Jake decided to ask Lyra directly what she was planning. He found her in the conference room, which had been completely transformed. There were tables covered with white cloths, flowers everywhere, and small lights strung around the ceiling. "It looked like a fancy restaurant, Lyra," Jake said. "What is all this?" She turned around and her skin was glowing bright blue with excitement. "Do you like it?" "I have been preparing for your ceremony." "My ceremony?" "What ceremony?" Lyra looked confused. Your date night ceremony, of course. The formal courtship ritual you are performing this weekend. Jake stared at her. Lyra, I think there's been a misunderstanding. But before he could explain, Dr. Patel appeared in the doorway with several other people behind him. Jake saw Ambassador Vex on a portable screen, along with what looked like Lyra's parents and several other Zephyrians. We are here to witness the historic ceremony, Ambassador Vex announced. The first formal courtship ritual between human and Zephyrian cultures. Jake's heart sank as he realized just how big this misunderstanding had become. Lyra thought his casual dinner date was some kind of important cultural ceremony, and now there were dozens of people expecting to watch it happen. This was going to be very hard to explain. Jake stood in the middle of the decorated conference room, feeling like his world was spinning out of control. Around him, people were gathering for what they thought was going to be an important ceremony. Human crew members were talking excitedly about witnessing the first interspecies romantic ritual. Zephyrians on video screens were adjusting ceremonial robes and discussing proper protocols. Lyra, Jake said quietly, pulling her aside. I think we need to talk. But Lyra was too excited to listen properly. Her skin was cycling through different shades of blue so quickly that she looked like a living rainbow. Is this not acceptable? She asked nervously. I researched human romantic traditions for many hours. I included flowers, as your friend Amy suggested. I arranged for ceremonial foods from both our cultures. Jake looked around the room again. There were at least 30 people present, including Captain Torres, most of his friends from the crew, and several Zephyrian dignitaries watching from wall screens. Everyone was dressed formally and looking at him expectantly. Lyra, he said again, when I said I was planning a date night, I just meant dinner for 2 people. Me and Rebecca. Just us, not this. Lyra's skin went pale with confusion. But your friends spoke of flowers and preparation. Amy Collins said it was romantic. These are indicators of ceremonial significance, yes, but Jake started to explain. But he was interrupted by Rebecca arriving at the door. Rebecca was wearing her nicest dress and carrying a small purse. She stopped in the doorway and stared at the room full of people, the elaborate decorations and the cameras that someone had set up to record the event. Jake, she said slowly. I thought we were just having dinner. The room went very quiet. Everyone was looking at Rebecca, then at Jake, then at Lyra. Ambassador Vex cleared his throat from the main screen. Are we to understand, he said formally, that this Rebecca person is the intended participant in the courtship ceremony? Rebecca's eyes went wide. Courtship ceremony? Jake, what is going on? Jake's face turned red with embarrassment. He looked at Lyra, who was starting to realize that something was very wrong. Her skin had gone completely white, and she was clutching her tablet like it was the only solid thing in the universe. There's been a misunderstanding, Jake announced to the room. A very big misunderstanding. Dr. Patel stepped forward. Perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this calmly. No, said Captain Torres firmly. Everyone except Jake, Lyra, and Rebecca needs to leave. Now. It took several minutes for the room to clear. The Zephyrian dignitaries ended their video calls, looking confused and slightly offended. The human crew members filed out, whispering to each other about what had gone wrong. Finally, only the 3 of them remained in the elaborately decorated room. Rebecca sat down heavily in one of the chairs. Jake, please explain what just happened. Jake ran his hands through his hair. Okay, so Lyra is from an alien planet and she's been studying human customs. When I mentioned that I was planning to ask you out for dinner, she thought it was some kind of important ceremony. A ceremony for dinner? Rebecca asked. Lyra spoke up, her voice very small. In Zephyrian culture, formal courtship involves elaborate rituals lasting several days. When Jake mentioned flowers and romantic intentions, I assumed your species followed similar protocols. Rebecca looked around at the flowers, the fancy table settings, and the mood lighting. You did all this because you thought Jake asking me to dinner was like a wedding? Not precisely like a wedding, Lyra said, her skin still very pale. More like the initial formal declaration of romantic intent. I researched human traditions and found many references to ceremonial aspects of courtship. Jake sat down next to Rebecca. I'm really sorry. I had no idea she was planning any of this. I just asked you to dinner because I wanted to get to know you better. Rebecca was quiet for a moment, looking at the elaborate setup around them. Then she started laughing. This is the most ridiculous first date setup I've ever seen. You're not angry? Jake asked. Angry? This is amazing. How many people can say their first date involved an intergalactic misunderstanding? Rebecca grinned. Although I have to ask Lyra something. She turned to look at the Zephyrian, who was still standing very stiffly with her tablet clutched in her hands. Lyra, you spent all this time and effort preparing this ceremony for Jake. That was incredibly thoughtful, even if it was based on a misunderstanding. But I'm curious about something. Why did you care so much about Jake's romantic life? Lyra's skin immediately turned the deepest blue Jake had ever seen. She looked down at her tablet and mumbled something in Zephyrian. I'm sorry. I didn't understand that, Rebecca said gently. I said, Lyra repeated in English, still not looking up, that I wanted to support my friend during an important life event. Rebecca looked at Jake, then back at Lyra. Lyra, can I ask you about Zephyrian emotions? Jake told me that you express feelings through skin color changes. That is correct. Lyra was still staring at her tablet. What does that particular shade of blue mean? The color you turn when you're around Jake? Lyra's skin somehow managed to turn even bluer. It is difficult to translate. Try, Rebecca said kindly. Lyra finally looked up. Her purple eyes were bright with unshed tears. In Zephyrian culture, we have a color that appears when we feel deep affection for someone. Not family affection and not friendship affection. Something else. Something that makes us want to be near that person and make them happy. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Lyra, I did not understand what this feeling was, Lyra continued. I thought perhaps it was simply strong friendship. But when you spoke of date night with Rebecca, I felt, I do not know the English word. Pain, but not physical pain. Jealousy, Rebecca said softly. You were jealous? Yes, Lyra whispered. Jealous? I wanted to help you with your ceremony because I care about your happiness, but I also wished... She trailed off. You wished what? Jake asked. I wished the ceremony was for us. The room was completely silent. Jake stared at Lyra, processing what she had just said. Rebecca looked back and forth between them, a small smile growing on her face. Well, Rebecca said finally, this is definitely not what I expected when I agreed to dinner. Rebecca, I'm so sorry, Jake started to say, but she held up her hand. Don't apologize. This is actually kind of beautiful. She stood up and walked over to Lyra. You love him, don't you? Lyra's skin was now so blue it was almost purple. I do not understand love. But I know that when I see Jake, my world becomes brighter. When he smiles at me, I feel like I could accomplish anything. When he explains human customs to me, I want to learn everything about his species so I can understand him better. Rebecca turned to Jake. And how do you feel about Lyra? Jake looked at Lyra, really looked at her. Her silver hair, her purple eyes, her skin that showed every emotion she felt. He thought about how excited she got when she learned something new about humans. How carefully she listened when he explained things. How she made him think about his own culture in ways he never had before. I think, he said slowly, that I've been so focused on what I thought I should want that I didn't notice what I actually wanted. He walked over to Lyra and gently took her hands. Her skin was still very blue, but now there were hints of other colors swirling through it. Lyra, would you like to have dinner with me? Just us, no ceremony, no audience. Just two people getting to know each other. Lyra's skin brightened until she was glowing. Yes, she said. I would like that very much. Rebecca clapped her hands together. This is the sweetest thing I've ever seen. Jake, you're an idiot for not realizing this sooner, but I'm happy for you both. Rebecca, Jake started. Don't worry about it. Honestly, I was only interested in dinner because Amy kept telling me you were cute. But watching you two together, it's obvious you belong with each other. She headed for the door, then turned back. Although you should probably go tell all those people that the ceremony is canceled. Or better yet, turn it into your actual first date. Lyra did put a lot of work into this. After Rebecca left, Jake and Lyra stood in the decorated room, still holding hands. So, Jake said, this is awkward. Very awkward, Lyra agreed. I have never experienced romantic feelings before. I'm not certain about proper protocols, Jake laughed. I don't think there are any protocols for this situation. I've never dated an alien before, and I have never dated a human. They looked around at the elaborate setup Lyra had created, the flowers, the candles, the fancy table settings. You know what? Jake said. Rebecca was right. You put a lot of work into this. We should use it for our first date? For our first date? Lyra's smile was brighter than all the decorations in the room combined. I would like that very much. But Jake, yeah? Next time perhaps we should discuss ceremony planning together. Jake laughed and pulled her closer. Definitely. No more surprise ceremonies. Agreed, Lyra said, although I must admit, this misunderstanding led to a very favorable outcome. As they sat down at the table Lyra had so carefully prepared, Jake realized that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected misunderstandings. Jake and Lyra's first official date was unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. They sat at the table Lyra had decorated with flowers and candles, eating food that Chef Williams had prepared specially for the occasion. The room was beautiful, but more importantly, they were finally talking to each other honestly. I must apologize, Lyra said, picking at her salad with a fork she still wasn't quite comfortable using. I realize now that I made many incorrect assumptions about human courtship rituals. Jake laughed. To be fair, human dating is pretty confusing even for humans. We don't really have clear rules about it. That is what I find most difficult to understand, Lyra said. Zephyrian courtship follows specific protocols. First, the families exchange formal introductions. Then there is a period of supervised conversations. If both parties agree to proceed, there is a ceremony to announce the intent to court. That sounds very organized, Jake said, but also kind of formal. Don't you ever just meet someone and want to spend time with them without involving your whole family? Lyra's skin shifted to a thoughtful shade of blue. Until I met you, I never understood the appeal of spontaneous social interaction. Zephyrian relationships are based on compatibility assessments and logical evaluations of partnership potential. What about feelings? Don't you consider whether you actually like the person? We do, but in a different way. Lyra paused, trying to find the right words. Zephyrian emotions are more predictable. When we meet a suitable partner, we experience a calm sense of satisfaction. It is pleasant, but not overwhelming. Jake leaned forward, interested. But what you felt for me was different. Lyra's skin turned bright blue again. Very different, chaotic, unpredictable, sometimes wonderful, sometimes painful. I did not understand what was happening to me. That sounds like human emotions, Jake said with a smile. We're always confused about what we're feeling. They spent the next hour talking about their different cultures. Lyra explained that Zephyrians lived much longer than humans, often 300 to 400 years, which was why they approached relationships so carefully. Jake told her about human concepts like love at first sight and following your heart, which Lyra found both fascinating and terrifying. So humans make important life decisions based on emotions? She asked, sometimes. Not always, but yeah, feelings are important to us. That seems very risky. It is, Jake admitted. But sometimes the best things in life are risky. As they talked, Jake noticed that Lyra's skin color kept changing in subtle ways. When she laughed, she turned lighter blue. When she talked about something serious, she became deeper blue. When their hands accidentally touched while reaching for the bread, she turned almost purple. Lyra, he said, can you control your color changes? To some extent, she said. But strong emotions override conscious control. It is considered very rude in Zephyrian society to display uncontrolled color changes in public. Is that why you kept leaving quickly when we first met? Because you were changing colors? Lyra nodded, looking embarrassed. I was not prepared for how strongly I would react to human interaction. Specifically to interaction with you. Jake reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin immediately turned a beautiful deep blue purple. I think it's amazing. You can't hide what you're feeling. It's like you're always being completely honest. It can be inconvenient, Lyra said, especially when one is developing inappropriate feelings for a member of another species. Why inappropriate? Because interspecies relationships are extremely rare. There are no established protocols. I did not know if such feelings were even possible, much less acceptable. Jake squeezed her hand gently. Well, I can't speak for all humans, but I think what matters is how we feel about each other, not what species we are. Lyra smiled, and her whole body seemed to glow with happiness. I am beginning to understand why humans value emotion so highly. Logic told me that my feelings for you were impractical and potentially problematic. But logic could not make those feelings disappear. Feelings usually don't listen to logic, Jake agreed. That's part of what makes them special. After dinner, they walked to the observation deck, which had huge windows showing the stars outside. Jake had always loved this view, but Seeing it with Lyra made it even more beautiful. She pointed out constellations that looked different from her home planet, and Jake showed her Earth's sun, which was just a bright star from this distance. "Jake," Lyra said as they stood looking out at the stars, "I want to tell you something important about Zephyrian culture." "Okay." "When a Zephyrian skin turns the deep blue color that you have seen me display, it indicates something we call Theranth. There is no exact translation in English, but it means a connection that goes beyond friendship or simple attraction. It is permanent." Jake looked at her carefully. "Permanent? Zephyrians typically experience Theranth only once in their lifetime. When we find our Theranth partner, we bond with them completely. It is not something we choose, it simply happens." Jake felt his heart beating faster. "And you feel this Theranth for me?" Lyra's skin turned the deepest blue he had ever seen. "Yes, from almost the moment we met, though I did not understand what it was at first. What does that mean for us?" "I do not know," Lyra admitted. "No Zephyrian has ever experienced Theranth with a member of another species. But I know that I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about what she had told him. Then he turned to face her fully. "Lyra, I don't know if humans have anything like Theranth, but I know that you've changed my life completely. Before I met you, I thought I understood what it meant to connect with someone, but what I feel for you is different from anything I've ever experienced." "Different how?" "Deeper, more complete. Like you said, I can't imagine my life without you either." They stood close together, looking into each other's eyes. Jake reached up and gently touched Lyra's face. Her skin was warm and soft, and it glowed even brighter under his touch. "So what do we do now?" he asked. "I suppose," Lyra said, "we learn together. We create our own protocols for interspecies relationships." Jake smiled. "I like that idea. No predetermined rules, no family approvals, no ceremonies unless we want them. Just us figuring it out as we go. Just us." 3 months later, Jake and Lyra presented their cultural exchange findings to the Galactic Council. But their presentation was about more than just language differences and social customs. They talked about how two completely different species could find common ground, build trust, and develop meaningful relationships. "The most important thing we learned," Jake told the assembled representatives, "is that connection between sentient beings goes deeper than cultural differences. While our species express emotions differently and have different social structures, we all have the capacity for friendship, understanding, and love." Lyra added, "Our relationship has shown that successful interspecies cooperation requires more than just language translation. It requires emotional translation, the willingness to understand not just what someone is saying, but what they are feeling." Ambassador Vex smiled from his position at the council table. "And have you developed protocols for this emotional translation?" Jake and Lyra looked at each other and laughed. "Actually," Lyra said, "we've learned that the best protocol is to have no protocol at all. Every relationship is unique, whether it's between members of the same species or different species. The key is honest communication, patience, and the willingness to make mistakes and learn from them. And," Jake added with a grin, "it helps to have friends who will laugh with you when you accidentally plan an intergalactic ceremony for what you thought was just dinner." The council members laughed, and the presentation was declared a huge success. The cultural exchange program was expanded, with Jake and Lyra appointed as the first official interspecies relationship coordinators. Captain Torres noted in her final report that while the program had produced some unexpected results, it had successfully demonstrated that emotional bonds could bridge any gap between species. She also noted that the station's first interspecies couple had requested permission to establish the first official dating protocols for humans and Zephyrians, complete with translation guides for romantic phrases and cultural sensitivity training for mixed relationships. Permission was enthusiastically granted. As Jake and Lyra walked back to their shared quarters that evening, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that first day when he met a nervous alien anthropologist who thought handshakes were sacred rituals. "Lyra," he said, "do you ever regret that misunderstanding about the date night ceremony?" Lyra's skin glowed bright blue with happiness. "Never. That misunderstanding brought us together. Sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most confused beginnings. Besides," she added with a mischievous smile, "I still think human courtship rituals could use more flowers and fancy decorations." Jake laughed and pulled her close. "Deal. But next time, let's plan the ceremony together. Agreed, Lyra said. Although I should warn you, Zephyrian wedding ceremonies last for 3 days and involve the entire extended family. Jake's eyes went wide. 3 days? Do not worry, Lyra said, her skin sparkling with amusement. We have plenty of time to plan. Zephyrian engagements traditionally last